Right, recording. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Jacqueline Brauman from TBA Law, and we've got a webinar today with Dianna Jacobsen. So Dianna is actually someone that I've worked with myself as well for my business. She's a country girl like me, having grown up in southern New South Wales with wheat and sheep farming. She went into accounting to help families running small businesses and farms, and then ended up running a tax practice until you sold that in 2005. Then you went further and did financial planning and psychology training, and now you're a pretty much one-stop shop guru for small business. And you've certainly helped me, particularly for that 12 months that we worked together. And so I really wanted to do this webinar to share some of your fantastic knowledge with everyone, and we can mine some of your brain to help those people who went into small business with all the passion for what they were doing, and for some reason or other, it's just not turning out the way that they thought it would.
Absolutely.
Pretty much where I was when I came to you too, wasn't I?
Yeah, I think overwhelm.
Yeah, overwhelm.
Lots of work. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like I was saying, I think a lot of people go into business either because they're really good in the field that they're in and they think that they can do it in a better way than being an employee, or they actually want to grow a business that becomes an asset that they can enjoy and have other people help them with. But quite often our business then becomes a job plus, and it's not where we wanted to be.
That's right. I do see that a lot, Jackie, with people having an entrepreneurial seizure and thinking, oh, I'm making someone else rich, I could do this, but not often understanding all of the compliance and the housekeeping behind that.
Yeah. And so, you still do your 10 hours a day as your job, and then you have the finances, the marketing, the compliance, the staff, all the other bits and pieces. And we're, as business owners, quite often connected with a number of professionals as well. Sometimes not, sometimes only an accountant, which itself can be an issue. So how and where do you work in?
Okay. Thanks for that great introduction. Yes, I grew up seeing the damage to families and small businesses, and realised that it was generally around the finances and the families. So kind of geared myself over the last 3 decades, dare I say, to help people in that space. I'm really passionate about helping those small business families in rural areas and otherwise to succeed in what they're doing. And so the biggest challenges, as you said earlier, are like overwhelm, staff, money, things that I call the 4 T's: turnover, time, team, and talk. So we'll talk about those in a minute and look at how we can make those a little bit more streamlined. But with regard to the professional advisory team, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
So I might explain that using a diagram, if that's okay.
Fantastic.
Anyone that's ever worked with me knows that I like coloured textures and paper, so that we can draw diagrams instead of having lots of pages with numbers. So the way that this works is most people, as Jackie said, have an accountant. And in years gone by, the accountant was kind of the go-to person. Anything that you wanted to know for your business, you'd go to your accountant. In the year 2000, the financial services regime in Australia changed very significantly, and the licensing and the segregation of the different advisory fields in Australia became much more stringent. It had another overhaul in 2016. So now it is the role of the accountant pretty much to be looking historical figures. They look at the trading and so forth to date. They look at your tax structures, your tax entities. They can talk about tax, but they can't talk about some things like superannuation and investments and so forth. So the accountant is still very much the compliance person. There's some great proactive accountants out there that will do the forward projections and help with your business management and strategic planning, and go and find them. But the actual designation of an accountant is at its most basic is the compliance work. So I do hear a lot of people saying, oh, my accountant doesn't do all this other proactive stuff, and that's not really their core role. We may or may not have a financial planner. Most people think they only need a financial planner when they've got a lot of money. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing as well. If you can manage what you do have, and potentially your superannuation is the second biggest asset that a lot of families will amass other than their house, and often it's not being managed at all. So that's what a financial planner does. So they more are looking forward. They are looking at the growth of your super, any investment options that you might have, albeit small, things like education funds, perhaps Centrelink eligibility, and personal insurances, so life insurance and income protection insurance particularly. And just a quick note on that is that those personal insurances can usually be set up within super. A lot of families don't have adequate insurance because they think they've got to pay for it out of their pocket. But go and get some advice on that. We then would have our wonderful trusted solicitor for all things legal. Yay. And I'll just reiterate, working with Jackie, I refer a lot of work to Jackie, and we have this great team structure that we've got going on now for the last several years, which works a treat because we make sure that all of these areas get covered by whichever one of us who has that skill set. But the solicitor historically has done your wills and not a whole heap else. The solicitor needs to become more a team player in this. We need to also include anything around leasing, property, commercial, contracts, employment, all sorts of other things. So the solicitor needs to be much more in the conversation than every 10 years updating your wills. We might have a bank manager, if you can find one that stands still, and they'll look after your lending. You might also have a mortgage broker instead. And this is where sometimes we see conflict between the accounting and the bank manager or the broker, because each person's setting up a loan to suit their needs, be it equity and serviceability on the part of the bank or tax deductibility on the part of the accountant. But it's really important that you talk to your accountant before you go ahead and get any lending in place, because so often I've seen people take the structure that the bank has recommended and then forfeited any tax deductibility because it hasn't been set up in the right entity or the right structure. We would then have perhaps an insurance rep. So that's for general insurance, property insurance, your cars, your buildings, and business and so forth. And most people have their brother, the bloke at the footy, or the butcher also giving unqualified advice. So what happens is the poor business owner stands in the middle. Everybody's telling them something different, a different structure, a different strain of advice based on their own specific profession or personal experiences. And this person in the middle is just tearing their hair out saying, I just want to be a plumber. Who do I listen to? So what we need to do is basically get cohesion around all of that. So find someone in this team who becomes kind of the lead person and ties that together, because the licensing is such that this one can talk about that, this one can talk about this one can talk about this, and there's all these areas in the middle that fall through the cracks, and we lose that cohesiveness, which is really, really critical. So that's your professional team. And as I said, go and find someone and ask what they do and what they can't do, so that you're not missing out on any of those areas.
Yeah, this is a great diagram, and even use the diagram potentially if you're screening people, because, we've both found professionals in these various areas who won't work well with others. So I think that it's now the time more than ever where people do their research on the professionals. They don't just go to the first person and they ask questions and they screen.
Yeah, and believe that there's plenty of work for everyone. This isn't about protecting your patch or something like that. It's about working to your particular licensing and skill set and capacity and capability. Know that, for instance, all solicitors don't do the same things. You know, Jackie's got a number of solicitors in her team who specialise in different areas. And then we've got a few other people that we work with in different parts of Australia, because in some of the state things, there are different rules between the states, you know, with stamp duties and property laws and things like that. So it's not about thinking that one person perhaps is across everything.
Yeah.
So that's the professional team, Jackie.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And so you're often the person that brings it all together as well and acts as a middleman.
I do. And that doesn't necessarily mean I need to take over the accounting or the financial planning or any of the other areas. Quite a lot I work with all of those advisors, and I stand beside the person in the middle and just work out how this is going to work and simplify it all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I should just say now as well, for those watching, there is a chat box which you can put questions into. So we'll take questions at the end. So put your questions in when you think of them. If we answer them as we go, great, but we will have a look at those at the end. All right. So how are you going to help our business, and how do we get out of, what was it, the 4 T's?
The 4 T's, yes. So, okay, another diagram. Clear that one. Okay, so generally when we have a business, we focus on the bottom line. Whether this is our bank statement or our profit and loss statement, pretty much we want to know how much money have we got, how much we've made, how much is still in the bank, and heaven forbid, how much tax we might have to pay.
Can I say here as well that the longer you're in business, the more you, I suppose, understand that some of these figures can be deceiving, particularly an accounting profit or loss, because it doesn't mean you've got the cash there, does it?
Absolutely not. And might I add, checks in the checkbook doesn't mean there's money to spend.
Yeah.
It's interesting that, you know, the beliefs that I hear from people over the years just come out of an employment role with not good grounding for all the homework for running a business. So the good advice is imperative. And the biggest complaint I hear from people is, I need more cash. If I had more money, everything would be okay. But to me, cash will just band-aid things. If you don't have the right systems in place, more cash is like pouring water into a bucket that's full of holes. So the profit and loss statement or the bank statement pretty much just becomes a scorecard for what else you're doing. So things like, how are you spending your time? What marketing do you have? What staff or team do you have? And the cost of your inputs. How much is it costing you to run your business? All of those things impact on and are impacted by this bottom line. When we have more money, we have more staff or we do more marketing. When we have less money, we cut back. And it becomes this expand and contract kind of mentality. But what we don't think about, and I think are equally as important, which is why I've done so many of the personal development sort of things, the self-preservation, I call them. So communication, time management, life balance, you know, personal empowerment, personal well-being, leadership, different sorts of personality types with staff, is your relationship. So how things are at home and your family, your health, because as soon as we get sick, you know, we forget about the work stuff, and our life balance. Same thing, when we're just overwhelmed and the wheels are falling off, we kind of lose interest. It all just gets a bit hard. So again, all of these things impact on and are impacted by how much money is there. The other thing that I think is really important, and with due respect, you're never going to hear your accountant talk about it, is your mindset. How are you traveling? And it's quite a scary statistic, but at the moment, it's not only the farming fraternity that's suffering the suicide statistics, but small business in Australia in general is at an all-time high in this space. So, and it's this sense of out of control, overwhelm. I don't know who to turn to. I'm all on my own, and it's all too hard. So, it's really important that we look at this, what I call mindset. So, what by that I mean, some days it's all just too hard. We get out of bed and kick our toe and spill the coffee and fall over the dog and can't find the car keys and get all the red lights and, everything goes wrong, and those sort of days. Other days we have everything goes swimmingly. Everything falls into place. We get the slowest checkout queue and, the quickest checkout queue and the green lights, and we get everything goes right. And most of the time we're somewhere in the middle. But sometimes when I get called in by bank managers or other professionals to work with families, it's been hard for a long time and they're really entrenched down here.
Yep.
And there's no point trying to fix any of this stuff up the top until we can just raise their sense of well-being a little bit. So there's a few things that we do for that, including just putting some of these systems in place so that they start to feel a bit more in control. And a lot of it's around just having the support team, that advisory team around them, so that they are not feeling completely alone and lost and out of their depth. Because as whatever their role is, the tradie or the hairdresser or the motelier or whatever, all of this other stuff is completely gibberish a lot of the time. So as soon as they feel supported and we get some systems in place, that in itself can help just to raise their sense of well-being. So we sort of do a few things to just get them to feel a bit supported and a bit more positive and hopeful, because once we can get that going, then we can shine. That becomes kind of your light bulb moment. So then you can shine, and then you can.
Lost it.
We did lost it. Sorry about that.
Just when you did your beautiful.
I know, right? But it just helps us then to have that sense of well-being. Yep. So then the next thing then we do to sort of reclaim that sense of being in control is to break those things down. So we then break down the time, the team, the talk, which is your marketing talk, as well as your self-talk and the turnover. And then we can go on, I don't know whether you want me to at the moment, but there's little diagrams and strategies, which probably will take longer than we've got today, but that we could do for each one around those. And what I suggest to people, Jack, is that they put those systems in place, the turnover, the time, the team and the talk. They're basic diagrams, but they become like a business plan. They become like a really simple strategy and structure and system and sequence. Lots of people are very busy doing lots of things, but they're not doing the right things, or they're not doing them in the right order. And they're being busy for busyness sake.
Yeah, and I think that's a point that I think we should focus on a little bit as well, is when people are particularly in overwhelm, they then don't know how they're going to find the time to start working on the business that they need to be putting in to even make a change. Because if you don't change something, nothing will change. So they really do need to, as you say, there's a lot of busy work, there's a lot of spinning wheels, or potentially even because you're so stressed you don't have a clear enough mind to even find the mental space to think. Because isn't there decision fatigue, isn't that a thing? Certainly get decision fatigue. By the time I get home, I cannot make a decision about what to eat.
I have this if someone says, what do you want for lunch? I'm like, really? Or my head's at this level working out hard stuff and I have no idea what that could be.
No.
That's right. And it's that sense of I can't see the forest for the trees. People are just so inundated and overwhelmed and, pressured that, they can't even comprehend that bigger picture. And that's where some of these basic frameworks that we do up that become then their active business plan. And they're just colored diagrams that they can stick up on a wall in their office around those 4 key areas that give them their basic framework, so that whenever their kind of wheels are falling off or they're losing track a little bit, they can come back and it's something tangible to anchor to and just follow the dots really. Rather than just being helter-skelter. And I see this a lot with business, and I'm sure you would as well. People spending a lot of time, money and energy following all the something shinies or all the things that someone tells them that they should do. 100 different someones tell them that they should do, but they're not the cash generating things, and they're not even the balancing things that they need to be doing. It's not the best use of their time, and that is quite deliberate to set those up, but it's not difficult when you've got the framework.
Yeah. Can we dive deep on one of them?
We can. Do you have a preference? Maybe the time one?
Yes, I think so.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So if we go here, so the diagram that I do for this is called my sunshine diagram. So in the middle, you put yourself, and the same way as a child would draw a sun. Okay. Now, those rays would be your cash flow drivers. So depending on what someone does as to what it is that they do that they raise an invoice for, whether it's selling, some sort of widget, whether it's providing some sort of service, whether it's commissions, whether it's whatever. Okay. So you may not have 5, but there might be 2 or 3 or 4. So they are the things that person, as the key person in the business or the professional or the leader or the manager or whatever, should be doing, because that's what drives the money. What I see a lot of the time is 50 gazillion, what we'll call planets, oscillating all the way around here, being busyness. Okay, so there's housework, and there's bookkeeping, and there's ironing, and there's walking the dog, and there's buying a gift, and there's driving the kids around, and
in my case, it was cleaning the office.
Cleaning the office. Yes, you should not be doing your own windows. And it's not about saying that we shouldn't have to do that stuff, but if we're going to derive cash and we spend all our time doing all of this stuff, then there's no more hours and there's no more energy that we can give. So it has to be a trade-off. So people look at this and they say, well, I can't afford to pay someone to do all that stuff. It's about breaking it down. The one I usually take first is bookkeeping. People spend time doing their bookkeeping. So for instance, if someone spends 10 hours per month doing their bookkeeping, doing their invoicing, doing whatever, 2.5 hours a week, something like that, and they say, I don't mind doing it perhaps, or they're quite capable of doing it, that's fine. But there's 10 hours a month that you could be charging. So if your charge out rate's $50 or $60 or $80 or something, then there's several $100s there that you're forfeiting. And I see this a lot where people say, oh, I'll go to the bank myself, or I'll go and do the post myself, or I'll go and, whatever, because I'm saving paying someone, $20 an hour to do that for me. Like, great. But if you charge out $80 an hour, then do the maths. So if we pay someone to do the bookkeeping, then chances are that they probably can do it in, say 4 or 5 hours in a month. So probably half the time or less that it might take us. And if their hourly rate is, say, $40, 5 hours, you've just spent $200 to get your bookkeeping sorted for the month. Now, you've had to pay $200 to buy back 10 hours of your time. So it's important that you use that time effectively. It actually goes into your diary. Now, sometimes it might actually be to have some time out or go to the gym or something that's important, or it might be to then have 10 hours of charged out work, which covers your $200 and then some, or it could be 10 hours that you work on your marketing or your staffing team or something that will give you more leverage in the longer run. And all that's cost you at the moment is, maybe an average of $40 a week. Okay, so you just do one thing at a time. And I usually say to people, pick one thing that's sort of you either hate doing, or it's taking your time, or it's the easiest to palm out. And I'm not necessarily saying that you sell your kids or whatever, but, perhaps the ironing, the housework, the bookkeeping, get some other kid to mow your lawn or wash your car or what have you. And you do each one for, say, a month and let that kind of become part of your system, and then pick the next one. And these are not all the same person. Often we think, oh, I just have to employ someone and that'll be, $50,000 a year. So that's all too hard and not affordable. But if you pick, different people for doing different things, and you pay some kid $20 to mow your lawn, and you cross that one off, and someone else something to do, your ironing, so you cross that one off, then you come back and you be a lot more intentional and a lot more effective with using your own time for the professional services or whatever it is that you offer.
Mm, mm. This is a great reminder even for me, because I suppose as you're in business for longer, and if your business is growing, what may have taken you 1 hour to do the bookkeeping then becomes the 10 hours a month instead. And at the beginning you were thinking, well, no, it's easy, but and you're still holding on to it thinking, no, it's easy. And so that's one thing that you still haven't got me to give up either yet, is my bookkeeping. And so I do that on my Friday nights. And realistically, if I paid someone, I'd be buying back my Friday nights, wouldn't I? She says.
Ding, ding.
And I guess it also comes down to having a serious look about what your priorities are, because also the longer you are in business, the more it just encroaches on everything potentially, and you just start giving up parts of what your life was. And so that's why I think it's acceptable that I don't have Friday nights. But actually, wouldn't it be nice to go to a movie once in a while, or go out for dinner?
or just, not
live?
Yeah. And that's where there's a 9 square diagram that I know you've seen me talk about before, but that gets that priorities and proportion back into place. And exactly what you said, all of the areas of our lives, whether it's kids or parents or house or work or anything, community stuff, at the end of the day, they all take a little piece of our time. And again, we need to be really intentional and deliberate, whether it's with work time or personal time, on where we're willing to, invest that time. And it's not about not helping other people, but it's about keeping it in balance. And that changes as we go through ages and stages, whether we've got children, whether we've got aging parents, whether, we're involved in community things, but it might be about, yes, being involved, but not in everything at once.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good reminder. I think that time potentially, like, people may put money at the top of their problems list, but time potentially is even greater, isn't it?
Generally, yeah. And again, I hear that all the time about the cash flow. And I say that cash flow is just a reflection of what you're doing. You can't fix cash flow with cash. It is totally about fixing how you manage those other areas of how you spend your time. And I hear that people saying all the time, I'm so busy and I'm making no money. And busyness, as we've just seen, does not equate to cash flow generation.
Yep. But then at some point as well, there's a bit of a supply and demand, isn't there? So if you're that busy, full of service hours or actual work, then it is a point where you need to go, well, actually, maybe you should charge a little bit more, because that can improve cash flow significantly too.
That's right. And also layering your staff then, because a lot of us have started as solopreneurs, so there's just us.
Yep.
And then we end up, again, with a bit of a diagram that I usually do, but with a staff hierarchy. But it's not a matter often of just employing a full-time person, because, again, that full-time person might be a specialist or do one area, but we don't need them full-time. That's where it might be that we employ another, professional level person or front of house or whatever on a part-time basis, and we might employ a different person for some admin or reception or cleaning or anything else, again, on a part-time, like break the pieces down. The probably the next biggest complaint I hear, it's probably a toss-up between staff and money, is about staff. But often that's because we've just said, I need help. There's someone that's upright and breathing. Put them together. And, it's what happens, but it's not effective. We need to be clear on what we want them to do and then match the skill set, which, as we saw with that sunshine diagram, is not all going to be one person.
Yeah. And we are getting into an economy more and more where you do short-term little projects too. So we don't necessarily even have to have a part-time employee. We could have someone that subcontracts, like a bookkeeper that's subcontracted out, or, like your cleaner, it's subcontracted out. I have a marketing person's, subcontracted out. And it's not necessarily the same amount of hours each week. And so you save when there's not a big project.
Exactly right. And everybody's working to their specific skill set. And you haven't got your, some person out of your team trying to figure out the marketing. You know, like, and everybody's doing the part that they love. So presumably my housekeeper has a motto that you can't let the house win. And that's fabulous. She loves doing it and we're all happy. You know, and
that's great. I hate housework.
Exactly. And it's not the best use of our time.
No.
You know, you think, oh, I could do it myself and save, you know, $50 a week or whatever. At what cost to either other income or my own time or my family's time or just whatever it might be. As well as, you know, helping my housekeeper.
Yeah, because she loves it.
And income supports her family. So,
yeah,
you know, it's just all those little pieces that you can spread out and it becomes a lot more affordable and digestible, but you just make sure that the hours that you've had to pay for, you use intentionally.
Yes. Well, and as you say, it can be intentional just to go, I'm buying back some hours to give myself some life.
Correct.
That's enough, isn't it?
Self-preservation, that's called. I think, you know, some of us were brought up, you know, or that generation with that selfish, if you don't do everything for everybody that anyone ever asks you. There's a line between selfish and self-preservation, and I think that kind of has to be rethought because, and particularly for women, are not great at this part.
We do everything, but that attitude sort of, I think, has lingered from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and now, you know, the money we earn doesn't go as far, and people have to work so much harder and all that sort of thing. So it can't continue to apply, can it really? That's
right. And it was really, it applied when often, not all, but many of the women were at home doing the homemaker role and raising the children. And, you know, we still have that sense of that's our job, and, you know, to whatever degree it is, as well as the fact that we work full-time and have careers and do a million other things. So again, it's about just being mindful of what you put in each day and each week, and you know, being selective on that.
We could talk about that topic for a long time. Exactly. But well, and the business stuff. I mean, this is brilliant. It's a great reminder for me too. And I'm just watching the chat box, and I just hope that people just aren't overwhelmed, because there's been nothing in there. So we're either covering everything they need to hear, or
don't know where to start.
Yeah, they don't know where to start. Yep. Well, where to start?
Give us a call.
Yep.
Okay, so what Jackie's holding up is I always offer a no strings, no cost phone call for 20 or 30 minutes, just to bounce a question or two off, get a second opinion maybe of what one of your advisors has said, or just really to say, here's where I'm at, where do I start?
So I think it's backward to front, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's looking all right.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, always happy just to make a time to have a phone chat. Like I said, there's no strings attached with that. That phone chat might be all you need, or if there's more things that you need, then we can, discuss the where to from here, or who to connect you with at that point.
Yep. And as I said earlier, we've worked together before, and you were flexible enough to work in with my needs. And the other thing is that you're so, it's so individualized. So it's not a program. You're working
customized.
That's the word.
Very customized, because everybody's at a different point with life and assets and liabilities and jobs and work and whatever, and everybody has a different point they want to get to. So it's then about designing how do we get there, both in terms of whether it's tax entities or structures or lending or legal or superannuation and all that stuff, as well as the day-to-day business stuff, the turnover time, team and talk. What do you do when you walk into your business tomorrow morning?
And if you don't know what you don't know what you need, or you don't know what you don't know, you got to find the person that does. So
that's right.
If anyone watching this wants to get in contact with Dianna, I will put the contact details somewhere built into this page where this video ends up landing for those who are watching a replay. Otherwise, you can contact me. Those who registered will have my email address already, and I can pass on Dianna's details. or anywhere else where we can send them? We could send them to your shineatbusiness.com.au website.
Yes, and there's a Shine at Business Facebook page for anyone that wants to do a bit of background stalking, just to get a bit of a feel for what we do before you reach out. That's often the case. It's a good way to get a bit of a sense of the sorts of people we work with. We work all over Australia and with all different industries, so I travel quite a lot, and I do a lot, as you can see, with Zoom.
Yes, brilliant. All right, thank you very much for your time. Is there anything else you want to leave with our...
I think that's probably saturated everyone, but just make a start. Don't I see people just be paralyzed with the overwhelm. Don't feel like you have to know all of this. I see people leave our meetings all the time almost walking on air because they still don't necessarily know what to do, but they think she does. So that's fine. That's all I need to know.
And there's some way forward, because it doesn't have to always be the same.
Exactly. And probably the biggest comment that I hear, and maybe you hear this as well, Jackie, is people saying, I wish I'd done this a year ago or 5 years ago or whatever. So wherever you're at, start.
Very true. Brilliant. Thanks so much. Remember, everyone, it is shineatbusiness.com.au.
Thanks.